Ryan, we appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate your contribution. Based on your collective experiences, could this be one of the best classes ever? Best offensive or defensive class?
I've done the piece studying the recruiting site era, which I think I really put back to like 2002, 2003, as people know who've watched the shows through the years. I used to work for Rivals. So that's the service that I would go through. And every year we would get into May, June, July, and I would write the piece. This is the year Ohio State is going to have its highest rated class ever. This is the year that Ohio State is going to get the number one class overall. And then, the wheels fall off a little bit and it finishes 2 or 3 or 5. There's the math is certainly there. And I know each of the networks kind of have a different way they do the formula. I've not studied all of them, but I think if you look at what could happen on the defensive side of the ball, if Houston, if Stewart both come on board, if KVA, if KJ Bolden, Aaron Scott, guys like that get in, and then Ohio State hits, 1 or 2 50-50 balls there, then I think that the defensive side could be strong. I mean, could be really strong. And I think the offensive side is already there. But one more thing to remember is that it's a constantly evolving playing field. We don't know what the rankings are going to look like in January. We don't know what the rankings, will the Armstrong twins move up? Will Air Nolan move up? Will somebody move down? There are always going to be people who are skeptical of the powers that be, that they will move rankings. The term Bama bump has been thrown around for many, many, many years. And there are people that are not fans of Ohio State who believe there is a Buckeye bump. As somebody who's covered Ohio State for years, I'm not as sold on that, because there are a lot of times that down the stretch, Ohio State would have 20 commits, and 4 would move up and 4 would stay present, and then 12 would move down. So I'm not necessarily sold on that, but the proof is in the pudding in terms of let's reconvene on Ohio State Buckeyes Live 500 here in a few years, once these guys have had a couple years to play, because that's truly the litmus test. It's not necessarily what Network A or Network B or Network C says. I know that everybody desperately wants to have that recruiting national championship for whatever that is worth, but win some damn games. That's going to be the thing out there. Win some national individual awards. I mean, those are going to be the things that are really going to tell the story along with Natty's.
Yeah, they have commitments from 5 national top 50 players right now. When you're talking about Jeremiah Smith, the wide receiver, just got Justin Scott, the defensive lineman, Mylan Graham, wide receiver, Aaron Noland. I know 24/7 moved him up a little bit. He is now 34 in the composite, and he is considered a 5-star. So he's kind of moved from 4 to 5-star. When you have a 5-star quarterback, that kind of raises some eyebrows sometimes as well. Just that kind of standard bearer for your class and your offense. That really helps your offensive class ranking if you broke it into the 2 units. And Bryce West is the 5th one, the cornerback from Cleveland Glenville. Interestingly, 24/7 Sports, our network, has him somewhere in the mid-100s as a network, and everybody else seemingly has him in the top 30 because his composite comes out at 45. So, and I've taken some questions on that. I need to ask Alan True and Steve Wiltfong and the other folks. I think Andrew Ivins may be one of the ranking people in charge at 24/7, like what gives on Bryce West. And my guess is the answer is going to be a twofold thing. It's going to be don't really like the competition that he plays against in the regular season. A lot of Cleveland public schools aren't very good, although they did run through everybody in Division II to win the state championship last year, for whatever that's worth. And the other thing is, I don't know that Bryce West probably got out to all the Nike, Under Armour, Rivals, 24/7, whoever has a camp and a combine. I don't know that he hit all of those And that's one area where they meet you, they look at you, they compare you, they time you, they weigh you, and they rank you. So if 24/7, for whatever reason, the one outlier on this never got proper data on him, or never saw him somewhere in a camp, then they're downrating him because of that. So I don't know. Kevin, do you have a thought on why? You have nothing to do with this, but why is 24/7 downrating our boy here?
I don't know. I'm not going to put this on 24/7 because I talk to a lot of people, and I don't. In order to protect sources, sometimes you purposely don't remember who tells you certain things, so you don't slip. But I've been to some events and talked to some people or whatever. I think there's some technique concerns there. He's very, very handsy, very grabby. Those are things that can be coached out of him. But I think that there's a belief that while he has all this athleticism and he certainly has speed and everything else, the technique is not necessary. I mean, again, we're splitting hairs. If 24/7, I don't have his profile in front of me. If you guys have him in the high hundreds, the 100s, that is, that's still a really damn good player. I mean, no, it's not being a guy being in the top 30 nationally, but I think that there's probably a belief that he has some technique things that he needs to work on. And the good news is there's probably going to be, between all of the networks, 3 or 4 more rounds of updates in terms of rankings. And if he comes out this year for the Tar Blooders and shows that he is putting himself in better positions and not having to grab as much and things like that, I think that he'll rise. But I think every talent evaluator, regardless of what network they're in, has certain things that they look for in certain boxes that need to be checked off. And I've certainly talked to some people who have felt that he's a little handsy.
Yeah, I don't get wrapped up in the rankings. I think if you get great players, great people, and fill your position needs in a given year, then you've accomplished it. And I think Ohio State 9 times out of 10 does that. So I don't worry too much about it. Again, we have all harped on the defense and the lack of star power until they were able to stack in there a Sawyer, a Tuimoloau, a Styles, a Hicks. Those 4 in particular. There's somebody else I'm missing, but those guys in recent years have helped certainly improve the profile, of what the defense looks like. And we'll see this year if Styles and Hicks can get on the field for a lot of plays and show that they can live up to those lofty rankings and make the kind of credit. And I think same with Sawyer and Tuimoloau. I think people are waiting for that all Big Ten, all American type season from those guys. And we'll see this year if they can deliver on all that promise and what that means on the bottom line, which comes back to winning games. I mean, they had the number 1 recruiting class in 1996 and never won a national championship with any of those players. They had the number one or number 2, probably number 2 recruiting class in 2002. And they did have guys who were contributors on the national championship team that season. Maurice Claret, certainly in 2002. Bobby Carpenter and A.J. Hawk were backups and really important special teams players, and on down the line. And eventually that class did produce a Heisman Trophy winner with Troy Smith, Santonio Holmes, probably about 8 or 10 guys who played a decade in the National Football League. So that was a class that even with the guys who flamed out, which after his first year, that was Claret and Derek Morris and Mike DeAndrea and 2 or 3 others, that it was still a productive class. They played for the national championship in the 5th year for many of those players, including Troy Smith in 2006. So there is a correlation. If you, have number 1, number 2, number 3 ranked classes, you can feel pretty good going forward about being in a 12-team playoff field if you can do that over a several-year period. So Ohio State's certainly been the team, the school that's done it, along with Alabama, Georgia to a degree, Clemson as well. So those are the ones that are going to be in the hunt year in and year out.
But, let's look at the class of 2018 as an example. That was the number 2 class in the nation, according to Rivals.com. 3 5-stars. Taraja Mitchell, who, you know, I really like Taraja personally, but he didn't have a huge impact on the team. Tyreek Johnson, who had zero impact on the team, and then Nick Petit-Frere, who obviously had a good season, he's, you know, a good career, has gone on to the NFL. Sadly, got caught up in NFL wagering issues, going to miss 6 games. Then you go to the next cut of guys, the high 4 stars. Brian Snead ended up leaving school under bad circumstances. Jalen Gill transferred out. Teron Vincent didn't necessarily have a huge career. He had his moments, but I wouldn't sit there and say that he was one of Ohio State's best players. Blue Smith, yes, people probably don't remember Blue Smith, the receiver out of Huber Heights. He transferred and disappeared. Antoine Jackson, who probably was a little bit of a step down from Teron Vincent. Tyreek Smith, who, you know, had his moments, and Tyler Friday, who had his moments. But if I go through this 2018 class, the player that was really the most impactful player, you know, day in and day out over the run of his career was the lowest rated player, you know, tied in there as a 5.7 recruiting ranking, Chris Olave. But, you know, so a lot of times you got to remember that rankings are only as good as the people who put the rankings together and what it is that they see. So that's why I don't allow myself to get too caught up in the rankings, because you just don't know. And I mean, what I should do is I should look at 24/7's rankings for that class. But the reality is a lot of times everybody wants to blaze their own trail and have their own rankings. But I think there is a little bit of inadvertent groupthink that happens there. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great example, that 2018 class. That is why let's don't get so wrapped up in the class rankings. And as I said, just the litmus test to me is, as I said, great players, great people, which I think some of the folks in that one you just ticked off may not tick that box entirely. And then, you know, fill your position needs. So, you know, that was probably the last urban class, and, you know, it was what it was, I guess.